Hello, everyone. My name is Ian Rowe.
And I'm Nike Fajors.
And welcome to The Invisible Men, where we make the achievements of incredible men invisible no more. Our intent wasn't to brag about ourselves. The idea actually was, how could we impart the lessons that we had learned facing discrimination? You know, we weren't shirking away from the realities, but how could we share what we had learned and what we have done, even in the face of adversity? So we came up with this idea to create Darryl. And Darryl was this imaginary 16-year-old Black kid who lives in forgotten USA, this imaginary urban city. And Darryl is the child of a single mom. He's got some negative influences around him. He yearns to do better, but he needs advice. And we tried to create a character who might resonate with lots of kids, not just Black kids, but lots of kids all around the country that might find themselves in a challenging situation.
Yeah, so just listening to you talk, I recognize in some ways, I am Darryl, right? And I was fortunate to be able to come to school here because someone invested in my education, and all of our students receive a scholarship here, and so I'd invite folks to visit us online at pinywoods.org. You can invest in our young people, because we're educating young people just like Darryl. So I really do believe that I am probably speaking to Darryl every day. And what I say to our Darryls at Piney Woods is pretty simple. I charge them to not just dream, but dream big. Have big dreams. And I charge them further that they owe themselves a big dream, because achieving that big dream is their rightful place in the world. Someone spoke that into me when I was a student here. I think we all owe it to our young people to speak life into them and speak the life of the dreams that they have, of those dreams being reality. And so I invite Darryl also to go online and look us up, pinywoods.org, and apply to that. Yeah.
Success sequence. I'd say you're going to have to work hard, bro. Nobody's going to give you anything. You need to finish your high school. You need to get a job. And you should try, not that my example is the best in this regard, to not get the girl pregnant until you're ready to be a father. And you shouldn't do that outside the context of marriage. That's what I would say. So I'd say something like that, about keep your nose to the grindstone and whatnot, which he's going to get from anybody over a certain age, and it may go in one ear and out the other. Another thing I say, though, is life is tough, and you never know what kind of blows are coming and where they're coming from. You need a spiritual foundation in your life. I'm not telling you to be a Christian or a Buddhist or anything like that, but I'm telling you, though, is that, this is what they told me when I had to go to Alcoholics Anonymous because I had a substance issue earlier in my life, and I had to deal with it. They call it higher power. Anybody familiar with AA knows what I'm talking about. And it's like, this is more than I can handle. Let me just, let go and let God. Let me let go and let God. So it's not all that, popular to start talking about God, and people that think that you're proselytizing and they want to rule that out. And I don't have a doctrinaire ideological, you got to be a Catholic, you got to be a Baptist. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying, man, the power of prayer Not that it's miraculous and, you know, there's a guy up there who pulls the string. It quiets down your spirit. It gives you a chance to escape from the pressures of the way. Let's quiet, peace. You know, you are not in control of everything. You're in control of what you're in control of, but there's a whole lot of stuff. Acceptance, you know, and what about duty? You know, I mean, things like this. Live an honorable life. You know, things of this kind. I try to somehow make that vivid. Preaching is not going to get it done. I'd have to say it in a register that he could understand. I'd have to convey it to him through characters and personalities that he thought were real. But I think that it's a universal point. I think you see it in every human culture that, you know, man does not live by bread alone. That's how they put it in the Christian scripture. Man does not live by bread alone. What does that mean? That means that there is more than this. There's more than what you feel. There's more than filling your belly or releasing your sperm. There's more to life than what you can see and what you can touch. Reverence, you know, something like that. I try to get that across, this spiritual point, because I think it's really, Darryl is going to have to weather some storms unless he's really, really lucky. He's going to need some spiritual resources in order to be able to do it. In order to be able to man up, do his duty when it's hard to do, he's going to have a reason why, more than just what he feels like, what feels good to him. It's not about what you feel, this kind of thing.
If I could just use a sports analogy, and that is real outstanding athletes who achieve, first of all, they work harder than other athletes. Secondly, they understand that real champions score in the face of opposition and not demand that the opposition be removed. If you are driving down the court on a breakaway, you'll slow up so your opposition can catch up, so you can slam it in his face. Now, what would happen if these athletes had a coach who said to them before they got on the court, well, this other team is bigger than we are. They got more experience than we have. They got better training facilities. They're tougher. Now, and so I don't see how, unless they stop blocking our shots, they're not going to be able to score. Now, would you take advice from a coach like that?
No way. No way. No way.
So I would say to Darryl, go with the coach who encourages you to work hard and score in the face of opposition, not in the absence of opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, Darryl, I mean, we believe in you. We believe in you, and we know that you can do amazing things. Make good choices, defer gratification as much as you can, be long-term greedy as much as you can, continue to be curious about the world, but most importantly, we believe in you, and just kind of keep at it and keep positive. Don't ever give up. Be persistent.
I remember 28 years ago, I told Darryl that education was the key to success, and that absolutely the way, proven, tried and proven way out of poverty, out of discrimination, out of being downtrodden is a focus on education. I think that that's true, but I would expand that today. 28 years later, I'd say that 14 years old, you got to be distinctive in this world. Education is a place where you have a very wide variety of subject areas to pick from. But if that's not is what for you, then find your passion, find your music that lives in you, where you are distinctive and truly best, and follow that. Follow that and give everything to it. And there will be people who will make fun of you. There will be people who will discourage you, who will not believe in you. But don't die with that music in you. Find that music, treat it like a treasure. Let it grow, nurture it, and become the greatest with that piece of what interests you and you have a passion for. Because that's where you will find true happiness. That's where you will be distinctive at whatever you do, and you will get the reward that you really want, that is appropriate for that passion that you have. That would be the difference in my counsel to Darryl today.
Darryl and all of the Darryls that are out there in communities that have failed them and are areas that are struggling, you should know first and foremost that you're not alone, that we're here, there's other men and women that want to support you. So no matter what your circumstances are, and some of the lonely nights and times, debating on whether to stay in school or not, you're not alone. There are opportunities for you to create wealth. The education aspect is absolutely paramount. So no matter what those challenges, no matter what those distractions are, get your education, because that will be your path. As you're doing that and pursuing that, we're now in a sort of Renaissance type area or period in which entrepreneurship can come from many facets. So whether you're in high school or college, don't be bound by any sort of mental block on whether you want, if it's something you can achieve. There's an amazing number of resources and mentorship opportunities. So talk to your teachers and deacons at your church or whatever religious affiliation, but seek out those individuals who certainly want to help and be a mentor. Because the more coaches and mentors you have, which made a huge difference in my life, there are people that really, really want to help and guide you so that you can minimize any mistakes and bad decisions that you make in your life.
Just do what everybody else does if they want to be successful, and you'll be fine. You'll experience racism sometimes, benefit from affirmative action sometimes. In my life, it's about evened out. I mean, so not to say just live your life. If you want to do specific things, study hard, work out, stay physically fit and confident, go to class. I mean, it's really not all that difficult.
But the only real choice you really have in life is your friends. And Darryl needs to surround himself. I have this mantra that my mom taught me, that Ian, that you can only rise to the highest level of the lowest level of the people you associate yourself with. That's why I associate myself with you, brother, so I can rise up to y'all. And so my point to Darryl is, too many times, back to this zip code thing, right? Darryl's got to find a way to see beyond the zip code boundary lines, beyond 77033. He's got to put around him individuals who right now he can look up to the Dan Mask of the world. He needs a Dan Mask. He needs to see something beyond that, that I couldn't have done. He needs to see the Ians and the Troys that, yes, I'm sitting here in this, Bowie, Maryland, beautiful home, wife, 2 kids, all this other stuff, crazy red jacket. But, I grew up, in a home that had a hole in the roof, of it. I grew up in a home that the air conditioning during the summertime in Houston didn't work half the time. I grew up with a mama who didn't have a college education and worked 3 jobs just to send me to a private school that to this day, I don't know what she paid for me to go to that private school, because the priest, she made a deal with the priest to send me there. And I surrounded myself with individuals who I still have in my life today, who my pediatrician, who's like my surrogate dad, who never let me realize, made me realize that I was more than what I was in that neighborhood. So Darryl's got to find him somebody or bodies who can tell him, you are more than this. And it doesn't matter what the white man does. You can be more. You can be what you want to be. And so the chains, the shackles that we want to call them, the shackles that the zip codes impose upon you, can be unleashed if you intentionally go out and get that education, get those individuals, you're going to fail, but that's okay because there's enough of a community that wants to pick you up, Darryl.
So I would say that your race doesn't limit you or confine you to a certain set of beliefs or ideas. You as an individual have the freedom to learn from whichever kind of cultural pattern or whatever kind of ideas that you're interested in. You know, you can be interested in Middle Eastern culture, you can be interested in African cultures, you can be interested in various forms of European music or whatever it is, whatever culturally interests you. You know, just because you're black or you're Indian or you're white doesn't mean you have to fit a certain kind of box culturally, right? Culture is fluid. You can learn things, you can learn new languages and learn different ways of thinking, and then that's not contingent on race. That's contingent on what you like. And culture is the beautiful thing that we should all value here in Western societies, where we live in multi-ethnic in multi-ethnic groups, where you go to a college campus and you meet people from diverse backgrounds, and it's all kind of a melting pot where you can learn from each other and pick the best things in each culture and shape your own worldview that shouldn't be hijacked by what the media is telling you, what you're hearing in popular culture, in entertainment, right? You as an individual have the agency to form your own opinions and form your own philosophies and views about various problems in the world. And then that's on you. And that's the beautiful thing about being an individual who has agency and can make a change in this world.
One thing I would tell Darryl to start with is, all of us, every single one of us was created in the image and likeness of God. That's an amazing thing to realize. Every single one of us was created in the image and likeness of God. That means anything is possible for you. But the problem is lots of things in your head, Darryl, are going to tell you that it's not. People in your neighborhood, people in your own family are all going to tell you nothing's possible. And fighting off those voices is the hardest thing. So you have to, first of all, convince yourself that everything is possible. And once you can do that and you're dealing with those voices up there, the number one thing I would say is, keep aiming high and surround yourself with people who are not like yourself or who you want to be. Because you start to surround yourself with people who are like, maybe I don't belong in that group. Well, you can belong in any group you want to belong in. Go find the people that you want to be like and aim high, and then get around them. Make sure you're the ones who are the other ones who are kind of below you or whatever, or you feel like are not a good influence. Keep them over here, but look out there and aim for the ones who you want to be part of and get them around. You go to them and be around them, or make sure you get around them. What you'll find is they'll rub off on you, and you'll become more like them, and then they'll be below you, and you'll get another group. And that was the story I told of myself. Was I identified those people downstate when I was at the science fair and said, that's the group I want to be with. And that's a really important thing. Who you surround yourself is who you'll become like.
Wow. And maybe I'll just add one more question, which is that, as you know, we're having a national reckoning, a national conversation about race, where someone might have heard what you just said to Darryl, and they say, yeah, but there's structural barriers that make it impossible for Darryl to do the kinds of things that you just said. Like, what would you say to that kind of response? That it's too overwhelming, it's too systemic?
So, I would give you I do go back to our ancestors. My cousin, Deborah Martin Chase, she's the executive producer of the movie Harriet, which hopefully all of you have seen or will see. But it really, for me, one of the things that just struck me when I watched it was the perseverance of this woman and her faith. And all the odds were against her. There was all sorts of structural stuff in her way. Really big structural stuff in her way. And she was able to, by whatever, she was able to get by it. And if she got through it, so can you. and so can I. And I think what you have to keep in your mind is there have been those who have gone before you who have gone through some unbelievable roadblocks. And keep that in mind, even when you see the roadblocks, or even when you feel them or people are telling you about them, you have to believe. It's the mental thing of, I can get through this, but it's also faith. If you look at Harriet Tubman, it was her faith. And, she just really stood on her faith to knock through the barriers that were there. And she was stubborn as well. She didn't believe what people told her. If people told her it wasn't possible, she didn't believe it. She said it is possible. And she moved through it. So that is a stubbornness, a determination, which is in our blood. We know that because we've seen it in our history, and it's to bring that back up in a different context. Of course, Darryl's in an urban city with structural racism. Harriet Tubman was a different kind of an impediment, but she had that steeliness which got her through, is to call on that same stubbornness and determination.
Why don't you talk to one of my three sons who are 37, 40, or 41? And it's not a put off, but I'm not sure Darryl would totally understand my path and how I got there. It's kind of not real for Darryl at 16. So I think he's got to talk with people who are younger, who are taking the early steps to put you on that path. But if Darryl would listen to me, and I would love to talk to Darryl, I'd go back and remind Darryl that I'm a son of a school teacher. And to me, everything has been made possible because of education. And I tell Darryl, focus on your education. Education will give you, put you in a position to have options in life. I'd also tell Darryl, get your computer stuff down, coding, what have you. That will give you the greatest mobility. More jobs require computer skills than you can imagine. And that will give you mobility to move through that area. And then the final thing with Darryl is, I'd say, and this is very difficult, you got to choose your friends. And I don't want you to diss your old friends, but you got to understand that not everybody is going to want what you're going to want. And I had this growing up, that I had some awfully good friends that I stayed good friends with, but I knew they weren't interested in the trajectory that I wanted. And so you got to find a couple of people like yourself who want to do something and get to know them, and you could support each other. And I'd say the final thing is, Darryl, you need to dream. 16 is too early to figure out what you want to do in life. I'm 76 and I'm still trying to figure it out. But you got to dream, because then you could be a little more intentional about what you do. So, then I finally tell Darryl, if he really wants to relate to me, let's go on the court, and I still have a good jump shot.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Still have a good jump shot.
I have this sort of philosophy. I call it the F-R-O philosophy. If you're Black, it's Afro. Okay, but the F is freedom. This notion of freedom and this notion that we are free. And I got this from Shelby Steele. He's this idea that you got to recognize that you are free. And yes, again, there's going to be some unfairness that comes down your pathway. It's going to visit your house. It's going to knock on the door, and it's going to get you sometimes, okay? But you are still free. And that notion is liberating, or at least it was for me, to know that, yes, there are sometimes these forces, intentional and otherwise, out there, but this notion that you still have agency and that nothing can hold you back. That's the first thing, realizing that you're free. The second thing that I share with my son, and I would share with Darryl, is this idea of with freedom comes responsibility. You have to do certain things in life to be successful, right? You have a responsibility to get your education and really focus and do as well as you can, not to BS with it, okay? You have a responsibility when it comes to reaching adulthood to, quite frankly, not get a girl pregnant, okay? If you do the right thing, get married, get a job, how you talk to people, present yourself. There's certain things that you have to do that are non-negotiable, okay? It's called responsibility, all right? And then lastly, once you realize that you're free and you don't buy into all these narratives that people try to suck you in and the larger society tries to suck you in to suggest that just because you're a black male, you can't do it. And once you sort of embrace the fact that you have agency and it propels you to realize that, hey, I have responsibility. The last thing that will open up are all these opportunities. Darryl, you live in an incredible time where you pick up your phone and the world is right there. You can create a business right on your phone. You can connect with, great minds. You pick up Twitter right now. You could be talking to, what's my man from Tesla? I mean, you can reach, you can reach Ian, right? So the notion that you can't get to somebody because of you're poor, you're black, there's no excuses. Again, this concept of responsibility and this concept of, hey, I'm an owner here, that I have freedom, is going to open up all these opportunities for you. And so I've seen it in my own life, and certainly the generation coming up, it certainly has many more opportunities that I had, and my father and my grandparents did. And so I would just say that, I guess the last two things I would end with, and this is again just from a personal standpoint, once you get past the fro, two things I would add to the mix. One being this idea of faith. I am a person of faith. I fear God. Jesus is my homeboy. I mean, I can proselytize with the best of them. And so I just fundamentally believe, because life is hard, because there's going to be some ups and downs, you can't avoid it. Black, white, rich or poor, it doesn't matter. There's going to be some things that happen in your life and to you that are not going to be pleasant. And so calling on your faith, I think, is something that, at least for me, has worked. And then the last thing I would say is get a good spouse. Get married and stay married. It served me well. You talk about Black wealth building. How much Black wealth is destroyed by divorce? And I mean, white wealth for that matter, but particularly Black wealth. And so, getting married will give you an opportunity to do what I did, which is take an opportunity at entrepreneurship or take a chance at it, because you have a spouse who can sustain you, hopefully. And so that idea of marriage and the bond, and, financial is one thing, and, spiritual and everything else it does for you in terms of raising kids is such a fundamental thing in staying married. And, look, we all go through difficult times. So if you need some help, get some counseling, whatever it is. But this idea of staying married, I think, is something that we don't talk enough about. And so I would just, say that to Darryl.
Because I'm 64 years old and I was raised by parents who were from the South, who, I remember my father, if he was alive today, he'd be close to 100 years old, I guess, or maybe in his 90s, I guess. But I remember him telling stories of his great great grandfather was a slave. I mean, just think about that for a second. That's kind of like, that's like mind boggling to think about that. So people of my generation, especially my parents' generation, let's just say, so I'm 64. So people of that generation, my dad was born in like 1911 or so, somewhere in there, 1911, 1912. Someone of that generation, they were willing to sacrifice a lot for their children, meaning work any kind of a job they could, didn't matter if they liked the job or not. And they instilled on their children, me, an education. I mean, I had to go to college. There would be no way that I could not have gone to college. I was always talked about my parents would have worked 3 jobs each to put me through college. So there was huge amounts of sacrifice there. They went without a lot of things, did not buy new cars, the whole bit, all that because they wanted their son to go to college. And I was fortunate enough to earn a scholarship, so that eased all that. But without the scholarship, I still would have gone to college. What I see this Darryl, this young boy named Darryl, a young person today. My son's one of the Darryls. He's 20 years old. Young people today are not of the mindset to sacrifice as much as maybe my parents' generation did, meaning to think long term about going to college, getting an MBA, going to graduate school, becoming a doctor. It's a little harder stretch for the young Darryls today, especially if they're in not a great situation, because Darryl may have to sacrifice his life for his children, maybe. And that's harder for people like Darryl to maybe think that far ahead, to think that he's going to sacrifice his life. I mean, it's not you're still alive, you still can work, you still can enjoy life, but you're not going to have a lot because you're giving it all to your kids. You're instilling in your children the ideals of education and not breaking the law, the whole bit. I mean, my parents would not have they did not tolerate slang. They would not have tolerated the way some people dress today, Black people dress today. They just wouldn't tolerate it. I mean, I would have been dead or not living in the house. I mean, that's just the way, just wouldn't have been there. But I see young people, like my son when he came to live with me when he was 10, he was wearing his pants in a certain way. And I was like, I couldn't understand that. Like, why are you doing this? I mean, we had to, I mean, we were like, you were not doing this. And we were, he was, he got to be up in size a little bit when he was 14 and, starting to wrestle a little bit, kind of felt like he could challenge me. And I'm like, man, like, what is this pull to young people to want to do this or to break the law or to do things that are going to make them a target? A lot of it's racial profiling, but some of it is stuff we bring on ourselves. And I grew up in an era and a generation. My parents just taught us how to talk to police, taught us how to stay out of trouble. They knew it was wrong. They knew, but it was how we had to live our life. And they were making sacrifices. They were teaching us how to make those same sacrifices so that we could move the generations of the Kemp family ahead. That long range thinking, I don't see as much anymore. The average young person, like my son's age, they didn't live through the civil rights movement and all. They don't know what that's like. They can read about it maybe. It's not even taught in schools that much. All they know is what they know now. And what they know now is that they think they can make $1 million just by an idea, which they could, but I don't know if they're willing to sacrifice the long plan B. Plan A is to go out and hit it and make it, start a company and do all this stuff. That's great. But there's no plan B there. Like, okay, what are you going to do to make sure that you at least have a great life and you instill that same trajectory to your children?
I remember somebody was talking about a special forces guy and had, seen lots of military action in places, very dangerous places. And he said one thing that he had learned is that movement is life, right? So hunkering down in a place, your bad things happening to you are just an eventuality. And I understand the lure of the neighborhood. You know, it could be dysfunctional. There could be, but it's your dysfunction. But the reality of it is, my take when I finally got out of this country to visit other places, I think I hadn't left. Outside of the Caribbean, I think the first time I got to out of Europe was 1990. And there's just something, you know, Eudora Welty said it best, travel is broadening. But I don't say you have to go to Europe. I don't say you have to go to the Caribbean even, but you got to get out of your community. And the only regret I have, people say, oh, you know, what would your message to the youth be? What would I say, I think about my younger days, and I have one regret, and the regret is that I didn't work harder. You know, your sense of time is very different when you're 16. And when I think about the almost the panic fueled drive to succeed that I had in my 20s and my 30s, you know, because there's no intergenerational wealth necessarily, right? So it's like there is no safety net. There was, you know, if I couldn't pay, you know, if I couldn't figure out a way to pay to Stanford myself, I was going to have to go back to Brooklyn College, right? And if I couldn't make it pay after college, there was no place for me to go really. You know, you have to get out and just get out and get away. And I think one of the best ways to do that, a friend of mine, I think I spoke of him earlier, to a certain extent, one of the engineers, he studied to be an engineer, but he also learned how to be a mechanic because his plan was always to escape this country. And he goes, people always need to have their cars fixed. And you know, if I can't make it work some other place, I can work, you know, I can study in Germany, do the research I want on quantum mechanics, and work at the Audi shop. I can easily do that, you know. And I have a stepbrother, ex-stepbrother at this point, I think he's passed on, who didn't really make it through high school. Things weren't working too well for him. I think he was having some, you know, mental health issues. But one thing he did do and have was he had to learn to trade. You know, he learned how to fix cars. So unfortunately, he didn't get out though. So, you know, but you have to change your base of operations. And when I look at my neighborhood in Flatbush, the one I grew up in, and now, you know, the benefit of Facebook, I can see, you know, and it was a healthily middle-class neighborhood. You know, there were the sons and daughters of construction workers, bank presidents, you know, academics, doctors, lawyers, but also cab drivers and construction workers. And nobody lives on the block anymore, but they've all gone on to, you know, different, interesting, varied careers, and they've all moved. The ones who didn't move, actually, sadly enough, a lot of them, I say a lot, I mean, at least 3 of them have passed on. So you got to move. And you got to get busy. You know, I knew a cat from a Haitian guy I used to work with, and Janus was his name. And dude had like 3 or 4 jobs, and they weren't great jobs. I was a cashier at a fast health food store in high school, and he was an adult male, but that was one of his jobs. And he had 2 other jobs. He slept about 3 or 4 hours a night and was that's hustle. It's like, if that's what I got to do to be able to create a situation for myself where I'm not going to be miserable, then I got to do it. And it was like, well, this is shameful. Yeah, screw your shame. You know, with the Chinese, a friend of mine was in China. He said, oh, they had this great saying in Hainan Islands. And I go, what is it? And he said, don't laugh at the prostitute, laugh at the poor person. I go, well, it's kind of hard for the poor people. But, you know, the idea was that, you know, you've got to be fruitfully engaged, I guess. And otherwise, there's actually no hope, really, right?
I want you to understand that the most important thing about you, the most interesting thing about you, is not what white people think of you. The most interesting thing about you is not what white people don't think about you. The most interesting thing about you is not what white people might not completely understand about you.
White people are very interesting in their ways, but what they think about you is not what's interesting about you. Be you. Darryl, there are going to be people, especially when you go to college, who are going to start teaching you that one way of feeling good. You know, Darryl, there are a lot of ways of feeling good. When you go to college, I hope you start drinking some liquor, and there's some other things you're probably going to do because I did them. Another way of feeling good is to start thinking white people might not like us. Don't. Just don't. Because, Darryl, if you think about it, if you go through your life wondering whether white people quite understand you, wondering whether white people don't like you and they're just pretending to, if you go through your life doing that, one day you're going to lay down, you're going to die. That's what happens. You're going to get a little tired and you're going to lay down and you're going to die. And if you spent your whole life thinking about yourself as an image in a white person's eyes, you let the white person win. And by the time you realize how silly that was, you're dead and you can't come back. Don't do that to yourself, Darryl. That's what I would say to Darryl today.
Today, you know, it's all about letting them know that they can do whatever they want, put their mind to it. And it's about kind of encouraging the ability to succeed. It's about instilling hope that there's opportunity where they can make a difference. And it's, you know, trying to, you know, create a pathway where a young Darryl can see themselves in any field of human endeavor and succeeding in those areas, and letting them know that they can do that, and that they might have some failure along the way, but that's okay, and that's going to be a part of their story. But also to know that they're not in this alone, and that we are all here to support one another. And my hope is, you know, through your work that you're doing with this segment, that, you know, other men of color are recognizing the impact that they can have not only on their, you know, immediate families' lives, but the lives of others, and that we do, you know, it should be part of our duty to ensure that we're able to help others. I mean, the whole reason why I'm so passionate about education is, you know, I can see and have seen how education changes lives, right? How not only impacts our lives and has, but by doing that, it impacts our families and our families' lives and those that we come into contact with. So I would be saying to Darryl that you know, he can do it. You know, he's not alone in that journey. We're here to help. But the sky's the limit, and you know, regardless of, you know, the discrimination that we all will see and face. And have faced, but if you look at, you know, our history, African American history, we have succeeded throughout it all, and we're not going to stop, and so neither should he.
Well, I think the first thing you need to do is find out what you love, and like I said, some of that is a matter of luck. But then you have to take personal responsibility for your success and understand that you can be great. Every one of us has something that's great in us. And with a 16-year-old kid who says it is in an inner city, which is something different from what I had to deal with, because I had a great college, great high school, great teachers. They really need to, one, believe in themselves. It's so important to believe in yourself as a foundation. And two, then you've got to really take on your education to sort of make yourself better, which would be, if your schools don't have books, figure out where a library is, go to the library, start writing down daily what you want to accomplish academically. You really take control of, have a really long-term goals for academic success, and then write down short-term daily goals of what you need to do. So that's taking control of your life and not being a victim of circumstances. It's really hard, I think, for those students in those situations, and I can understand that. But those are the two things that I think the three things I think I would say to those children. The most of all, believe in yourself, because I understand now that we're only limited by our imagination, our thought, and so If we don't have any limits, if we really believe in ourselves, you know, we can accomplish a lot of great things. Now, you may not end up like I thought I was going to be an Olympic gold medal. You may not end up an Olympic gold medalist, but, you know, if you fall a little bit short, you know, you can live with it.
I would tell Darryl to try his best in school, work as hard as he can. But my advice to Darryl would focus on a couple of things, because this is the advice I would have wanted at the same age. I would want to see Darryl grounded in something bigger and higher than himself. I think there's way too much navel gazing in our country right now. Way too much language of personal therapy. Everybody's offended. So I'd want Darryl to see himself as a created being, created in God's image, fearfully and wonderfully made, so that when people start to speak against that, whether they look like him or not, he would remember not just who he is, but whose he is. So that's one.
Wow.
I'd also want Darryl to get married way earlier than most people tell him he should. I don't want Darryl to be 65 walking down the aisle for the first time. And, you know, in a perfect world, I'd want Darryl to find a good woman. They get married, they have their children, mid-20s, late 20s, whatever it is. And for Darryl to pour, and his wife to pour into his children the types of you know, values that have allowed him to succeed. If you asked me this question, I would have said, I want Darryl to try to get into the best Ivy League school he can get into. Increasingly, I may prefer Darryl to pick up a trade, because in many of the schools, particularly outside of the hard sciences, Darryl is going to hear things from people who say they're acting in his best interests that will only leave him deflated and defeated. And I don't think that's good for him, because I wouldn't want him to pass that on to the next generation. So if Darryl focuses on his faith and his family and his community, he can still be an intellectual. He can still read all the great books. If he wants to do what me and my family, we decided to do, which is homeschool his children, to not as a way to protect and prepare his children for the world that's to come, so that they are not gobbled up by the indoctrination that is so common in a lot of K-12 schools. I'd also advise that if he was open to that.
Yeah.
But I would want to see Darryl be more concerned about the man he is in his house than the man that's in the White House. So that would be my advice to Darryl.
In a nutshell, that Darryl can't do it on his own. Darryl needs God's people, God's power, God's principles, just like I do. I understand pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I get that. Personal responsibility for sure, absolutely. But what happened in my wife and I's life didn't happen just because I had a good idea. I didn't have the education. I didn't have the mentorship. I had to find somebody to help me. And there was God's people. I had to make the choice. The one thing I had to do was make the choice of who was going to constitute that people group. And thankfully, I chose God's people. I had to choose if my stinking thinking is getting me in trouble, I need to change that thinking. And my choice was, will I use the wisdom of man, or will I use the true wisdom of God? And then God's power. You know, I can try to say, well, me being strong, or, you know, I can build my body up, or I can run marathons and get my endurance up. But man, it was the power of God when my kids couldn't afford, or we couldn't afford food for my children. The doctor told me that my daughter had a disease that I couldn't even pronounce, Kawasaki's disease. We called upon him for his power to do what we could not. And so it's all of, you know, all these things are easy. God's people, God's power, God's principles. But as a young man, he has to determine for himself where he will go to fill those three boxes. Will it be God, or will it be the world? And I make no small, you know, I mentor a lot of young men over the years. but I mentor them in the word, even though 99.9% of my work is in the secular world, schools and detention centers and communities all over. I take Christ into that classroom, even if it's just through my testimony. They hear it in my passion and they ask me, why do you care? Why do you even give a freak about what's going on? You yourself as a teen father, and now, you're going to try to tell this young man that you're speaking of not to do what you did. And one of the things I love to say when they ask me that, guys, is I pick that guy up out of the room and I say, what's your name? And he'll say, Sean. And I'm like, what y'all don't know about Sean is an avid bear hunter. And Sean, in the middle of the inner city, and Sean, when he was 13 years old, was going bear hunting, and he saw these two trees and had a big pile of leaves in between the two trees. And he stepped between those two trees, and there was a bear trap under there. And boom, it hit Sean's leg, and he almost lost his leg, but the ambulance came and it saved his leg. And now Sean is 34 years old, and he's got Sean Jr. walking right behind him, bear hunting. And Sean comes up against that pile of leaves in the trees again. And he looks at it and he says, wait a minute, I know what that is, right? That's wisdom. I'm going to walk over that bear trap. And then he looks back at his son, Sean Jr. He says, man, should I tell him? Nah, I don't want to be a hypocrite. And so, he let Sean Jr. walk the walk that he walked without any wisdom behind it. Sean Jr. hits that trap, and his consequence was worse than even his father's. He lost his leg. How many would hit up Sean on social media and say, congratulations for not being a hypocrite? I think there's so many fathers that have the right message, that have the right passion, that have the insights, but the fear, because pop culture is saying that we're hypocrites if we tell our kids or people we love to not do what we did. But that's not hypocrisy, family. That's love. And the world is telling people like that young man you're speaking of that affirmation equals health and wholeness and love, and disagreement equals hate and harm. And he needs a community of fathers and men around him to teach him otherwise. I think the best thing that young man can do is attach himself to wisdom, attach himself to power, and attach himself to people who he wants to be like, in a nutshell.
I want to, if I could put nothing else in you, I would talk to you about critical thinking skills and believing in yourself and your common sense. You can understand what you see before you. What color is this? What does this look like? Which one of these look better? If I tell you, if you know you like oranges better than grapes, if I keep telling you grape is the fruit of the day, you shouldn't just change your mind. So in that vein, when these upper middle-class blacks come to you and tell you your life is destined for failure because it's hard out here for a pimp, you have to ask yourself, but you drive a 2019 BMW. I've seen your house. So you have to say to yourself, because unfortunately, they're not going to tell you this. You got to say, I don't think your life is really that bad. So change the conversation. It's like, okay, just nod when they say that. Say, well, how do I do what you've done? So they don't go there and do it like they should. Ask the questions. When you see a successful black man or woman, ask them how they got there. Ask them, what can they do? Just agree with them. Just ignore the part on races, because you live it. You see what happens in poor communities. I would say, ask them what do you suggest I do if I want to be an engineer or doctor, if I want to live a different life, if I want to travel to Paris, what do I do? Because at that point, you take the politics off the table and they're not going to give you a political answer there, I hope.
I would definitely say read. And I think that reading helped me a lot, but I would also encourage, I would add to that something that I wish I had done in retrospect is read biographies, understand what people, how high they have achieved and what they have achieved. One of the things that I found even after law school, literally, is that, again, I knew being raised in the Bronx, what I want to get away from, but I didn't know all the possibilities that were available. And I think that coming out of that environment, it's important to open your eyes to the possibilities. I mean, right from the Bronx, going to school not far from where I went to school, where I raised, rather, Colin Powell went to school in the South Bronx. Yeah. And to just read how people came out of similar situations or other, may have been another area, but were able to aspire and reach heights in areas of which I had never contemplated. I think that's very important, just to open your eyes to the possibilities, because you get tunnel vision in that type of environment.
I would say that if you look at our history and the struggle that we had, the struggle and the success was only made possible because we actually connected them to the principles of America's founding. And it was only through that framework that we could achieve freedom. If we were just saying, okay, it's separate from America and America is evil, that you can't really reform the system or expand the system. And so that's what I would say, is that you have to just look at our history and what got us to where we are. It was a struggle, but we believed in those principles that allowed us to then articulate the freedom that we wanted. So you can't reject that, and you can't just say that it's evil. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here and we wouldn't have the success that we've had.
There's a pathway. Some people have a steeper hill. Some people have more rough road than others. But if you set your mind on what you want to be and what you want to do, you can accomplish it. It's about finding the resources and being resilient. People that do not give up. I did not at all predict this path. When I was sitting there, I had no idea where my career went. But I wouldn't change a job, or I wouldn't change a day of it. Because even in things where I wasn't as successful as I wanted to be, I took a step back, looked at the resources and things that are available to me, and found a new goal. Chasing a goal, you can do more than you ever thought you could. And you'll surprise yourself and surprise others. And as you're going on that route, and when you get there, remember to reach back and grab somebody else and bring them along with you.
They need to educate themselves, and if they do that, they will realize that whatever problems are out there today, and I'm not someone who thinks there are no racists out there, that racism has been vanquished from America, or that I will live to see the day when it has been. At the same time, it's clear from someone who does their homework and picks up a history book that there have never been more or better opportunities for Blacks in this country, and therefore in the world, than exist today. And that his job is to prepare himself to take advantage of those opportunities. And that should be what his focus is on, not on playing the victim, and not on making excuses as to why he can't succeed, but to keep in mind what others went through before him, what they were able to overcome, and why he has even fewer hurdles to overcome. And he should be appreciative of that and not let those opportunities go to waste.
I would encourage this young man to first of all read a lot of history. Read history of Black Americans in this country who excelled under massive duress and structural and institutional oppression. Got to read those narratives, because those can really help form and shape an imagination for what you need to do in order to make real progress for yourself right now. And I think, secondly, I have this acronym that I use to sort of help people like Darryl think about his life, and it's DAVE, D-A-V-E. The D is human dignity, and I want this young man to know that he matters. He is a man of dignity, and that he should see himself as having some value and significance because he's a person. And more directly, in the Christian tradition, he's a person who's made in the image of God. And so he should stand up straight and tall because he is a Black man. You have dignity. It was like the signs in the civil rights movement in Memphis, I am a man.
Yep.
Right? So, brother, you are a man. And don't let anybody tell you that you are less than that. Secondly is agency. I want him to know that his life can do something, that you can make a difference in leveraging your dignity for the good. and that people are going to tell you you don't have any agency, or they're going to tell you that you only have agency if some well-meaning white people give it to you. And I'm going to tell them, no, your agency isn't derived from somebody else's help. Your agency just is actually derived from your dignity. And so don't think that you need somebody else to help you accomplish your goals and your dreams. You don't actually need that at all. You can do these sorts of things because you have the capacity for progress and change. You have agency. The third one is virtue. And this is where I say, hey, bro, there's some things that you need to know about wisdom. You can't be a liar. You can't be a liar and a cheater, a backstabber, a gossip. You got to keep your pants on if you want to make it in this world. So there's some virtues that you need to practice, right? Your mama to say please and thank you, things like that. There's just some virtues that you need to make it. And there's some people that are going to tell you you don't need those virtues, those values. They're going to call that respectability. That's some nonsense. Because the people who are the most successful in life are the ones who say please and thank you, the ones who look people dead in the eye, who practice gratitude, and who have a sense of morality in their lives. And lastly, I'm going to tell the brother that he should practice the habit of empowerment. That he is not only a man of dignity, not only a man of agency, not only a man who has a capacity for virtue, which this country and the world needs. We need some people doing good things for good reasons. But he also needs to know that he has a community of elders in his life who want to put power into him, to empower him, to sort of push through his failures and his doubts. And that he needs that. He needs to rely on the wisdom of people that have gone before him. So, pursue some mentors. Get some help. When you fail, make a phone call. Right? Let people put power into you so that you can be the man that you are destined and designed to be. So I believe that when young men understand their dignity and their agency, and when they have an imagination for the power of their virtue, and if they have people who are willing to invest in their own empowerment, nothing will be able to stop them.
There are no easy paths unless you have a great inheritance.
And even then,
that's right. There are no easy paths to leading a good life. But more than anything else, get yourself empowered to lead a good life. Be a man. Take care of your family. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And more important than anything else, be a good person. Start writing your own obituary the day that you become conscious of being a man. Go to college, get yourself an education. For God's sake, don't take on drugs. I would say don't smoke. Be a good person. Develop the individual characteristics that make you a good person, and then define who you want to be. Don't let other people pick your friends, pick who you will support politically, or define who you are. You're not a black person. You are an individual who happens to be a person defined by your society as black. But that doesn't define who you are at all. Be a strong person of strong character, and you will be all right if you follow that path.
Yeah, I would tell him to optimize all things in the span of his control, and that that's not going to be fair. He is not going to have opportunities that other people in other places are going to have. He's not going to have resources that other people in other places have, but he does have agency in his sphere, whatever that looks like, and then optimize all of that stuff. The people, the institutions, the opportunities as they present themselves, and then and not, don't do it just for material gain, but have something more more at the core of who you are as a person that's driving you. And so if we tell young Black men, do well in school so you can make six-figure job and get a pretty wife and have a house out in the suburbs, that's the wrong motivation in my view. Instead, optimize all of the opportunities within your span of control, whatever they may look like, and do it because of something. If you don't like the conditions in your neighborhood, then optimize those things so that when you're in a position to make change, you can change it for the next generation. If you don't like the way the other nations treat the United States, or if you don't like the way the school system, your school system operated, or you're fascinated by technology and you're looking for ways to improve communities or opportunities or start your own business, whatever it is, then allow the principle of the thing you're interested in drive you, and not like the material gain from excellence be the thing that drives you. I will be honest with you though, if someone had told me that at 16, I don't know if I would have been ready to receive it. And because frankly, my parents told me that at 16, and I did well in school because I had to, or it was, there was corporal punishment awaiting if I didn't. And I also did it because I wanted to make them proud. And so this is sort of where I'll wrap up. The last thing I would say is find the person you admire, whoever that is, school teacher, parent, uncle, cousin, whoever, and then work to make them proud. And if you do that, then you will position yourselves to capitalize on future opportunities as they arise, and when you have a better understanding of what you want to do with your life.
Effort matters. Skills matter. And then I would expect pushback. What about this? What about that? And I wouldn't even coin it as false narrative versus this. That's already giving it everything too much credence. It is about what the returns are to effort and skills. And there are millions of data points to say they are very positive, independent of what race or group you are. Yes, there's discrimination. Yes, someone gonna call you the N-word. Yes, someone gonna put their hands in you. I'm not saying there's not taxes. But what I'm saying is that effort and skills are rewarded in the marketplace. And that's your best shot. And because what's the other alternative?
Right.
So I would tell him, I'm going to give you a couple of tips. Some are going to sound kind of hocus pocusy, and some are going to sound very grounded. I'm going to start with the grounded ones. Actually listen to all the people who told you to stay in school and work very hard. Get good grades. Treat people well. Do a little bit more than you're asked before you're even asked to do it. Like literally take that initiative. That when you're doing that, you're sowing these seeds and they will bear fruit. They just always do. Maybe not immediately, but just if you work hard, study hard, treat people nicely, take care of yourself, take care of others. There's an incredible effect of giving and receiving that you're a part of a dynamic that's actually universal law that cannot be broken. So do that. The other thing that I would say is that life is lived from the inside out. It's an inside game. There is nothing that you can see, touch, own, even yourself, that didn't start with a thought and an idea. Nothing. Not the shirt, not the glasses, not the shoes. Nothing that you can see in the material world was not first an idea.
Wow.
And the idea was held by some ordinary people, really ordinary people, who are probably more ordinary than you. They probably have a lesser IQ than you, and they probably may even have less support than you think you have. So the thing to do is spend time visioning, spend time getting the feeling of the wish fulfilled, they call it. Have an idea, have a dream. I go, sometimes I used to do it more when I was in the Obama team. I would go to high schools or colleges and do grad speeches or honors day or whatever. And I would often, I would bring a couple of people to the stage and I would say, okay, here's a $20 bill. You got 10 seconds to tell me 5 things you don't like, don't want, can't stand, can't abide, just the worst. You can do it in 10 seconds. Name 5, you get the $20. I always gave the $20 away, always, because people always know what they don't want and what they don't like and who they don't like.
Right.
Now, I would put a $50 bill and call 2 people to the stage and say, you have 15 seconds to tell me 5 things you want to do, be, have, experience, or possess. And they would get wide-eyed and be like, oh my God, and never, ever, ever win the money.
Right.
Why? Because we go around knowing what we don't like, knowing who we don't like. We spend so little time preparing what we actually want. I hate this job. Which job do you love? Which would you want to have? I don't like that thing. What would it be? It's the whole thing in politics. People complain, but they never have a substitute.
Right.
Life rewards you when you know what it is you want. So I would tell the 16-year-old, spend some time figuring out what you want and dwell there. It's amazing. You read the philosopher Goethe is accredited with that thing, Just Begin It Now. It's a fabulous paragraph. If you haven't read it, it basically said, whatever you want, whatever you think you want, whatever you want to do, begin it now. Yeah. Because boldness has genius and it unleashes all of this stuff that comes to meet you to accomplish the end.
If I can meet them face to face, I'll tell them what I tell all the young guys that I meet face to face. I'll say, hey, you got a job, you want to get into software, you jump in, I'll take it down to my office. I do it all the time.
Find one thing that you have an interest in and simply learn more about it and get better in it every day. Right? That's the first thing I'd say. The second thing is as you do that, be open. Look for clues and other things that show up as interest that could in fact be, your music, right? And work on your self-awareness. And I guess the last thing I'll say is at 16, 15, 14, we don't see our peculiarities as strengths. And I would just love for him to own that whatever is peculiar about him now is truly what can make him unique. And it'll probably have a big play in his music.
Thank you for watching another episode of The Invisible Men. You can find other episodes at the AEI podcast channel on YouTube or the website invisible.men or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.